Here are some common problems I come across as a personal trainer with the people that I train. The first thing I see is freaking out over daily fluctuations and changes. So whether they feel a bit weaker in the gym, which is super common, and they're not as strong as they were maybe last week, people will see this as like the end of the world, that they're not going to be, just because they're not getting constantly stronger all the time, that there are some dips and fluctuations, that they're not going to be able to continue getting stronger and they have to change things, when ultimately it could just be an external factor of lack of sleep, really high stress at work, potentially affecting them. Even a weekend out, drinking more alcohol can still affect your recovery. And maybe you're not as recovered as you could have been because you're living a normal life and you want to have fun doing things. So it's really just about setting the expectation that you're not always going to get stronger every week. Usually you can as a beginner, and that's fine, but along the road you're going to have some days where you're not going to be stronger, some weeks where it's going to be up or down. And this is similar to weight loss. So that's why I'd recommend tracking your weight every morning. Treat it like a habit and develop a system for it, and not so much worry about the number, but looking at the weekly trends and knowing that if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, that's going to be stored as glycogen in the muscle. So if you have a big feed one night, you're going to be holding more glycogen, which is going to increase your weight. It's not necessarily fat gain. And you could also be holding more sodium, which is going to hold water. So you're going to be holding more weight, and that's not fat gain either. So these type of ups and downs with your weight will generally be from that. As long as you're in a deficit, you're eating relatively less processed foods, then most of it is probably just going to be those short-term fluctuations that they'll come quickly, but they'll also go away quickly as well. So this is quite similar to investing. You want to invest for long term. You don't want to just like take money out when you're afraid or put it in when you think you're going to get a lot. So same with fitness. It's a longer term investment, and changing things a lot can just make things more confusing. Now, if something has been not working for more than like 3 weeks, or you've been plateaued for more than 3 or 4 weeks, then you could start to look at changing 1 or 2 things at a time and not having to change the full program, but maybe just changing one thing in the program that you think, and just track that to see if it makes a difference or not. So you're not just changing the whole program, changing everything all at once, not knowing what actually is going to make that difference. The next point is thinking that the program is all that matters in training, or the nutrition. But I'd say the most important thing is adherence to the program, because without the consistency, you're not going to be able to do this for long enough to see the results, and you'll quit before then. So that's why I see when people start, if they're not actually enjoying a program, I'd rather them do a program that doesn't have to be the most optimal program for muscle growth or whatever, but it could be the most optimal program for them, which means that they're going to stick with the program for a long period, or actually enjoy training in the gym and build more of a habit with it and be consistent with it so they enjoy it. The more you enjoy what you do, the more you're going to do of that thing. The third point is usually women are afraid of getting too big, and this is a very unrealistic fear. People try to get muscle for years and growth, and it has diminishing returns over time. As the more muscle you get, it's going to be harder to add more and more muscle mass. Losing fat is faster than gaining muscle. So you're not going to accidentally wake up one morning and be huge, because you have to really force that adaptation, which takes a lot of effort, being in a surplus for a long period of time, training effectively for long periods of time. And beginners will generally have the easiest time of this because they have the least amount of muscle mass and they have the most upside in the beginning. But to get to a place where you're actually quite large, to a point where other people are going to notice, will take years to do. And most people try to get there actively and they still struggle. So if you're not trying to do it, it's an unrealistic fear of training. The fourth point is people thinking they have to do the cardio or run to lose fat. In my opinion, cardio, running is better for cardiovascular function. So your heart, increasing the left ventricle ability to pump blood throughout the body. So that's going to help with a healthy heart. So I see it as training cardio is good for a healthy heart, essentially. And then if you want to do sprints and things like that, that's going to train the muscle to uptake oxygen better. But if you're doing low intensity, long endurance type of work, that's great for just being aerobically fit. Now, for fat loss, it's not the best idea just to run just for fat loss. And the reason is because when you're running and you're not, if let's say you're just running, but you're not resistance training, you're going to lose muscle mass and fat at the same time. Because you're not resistance training, you're not telling your body that it needs to keep the muscle mass. So it will use that as energy if you're in a deficit trying to lose weight. At the end of that, if you're running all the time and not resistance training, you're going to get to a point where you've just lost a lot of muscle mass and fat, and you're going to look not nearly as good as you would like if that's your goal. But also, muscle is important for things like lifting things throughout the day, coordination, reducing injury risks as well as lifting also improves tendon health, bone density. So those are the things that you miss out on. And I think for fat loss, necessarily, you don't burn nearly enough calories to drop the weight. And running will typically make someone will feel a lot hungrier. So after a long run, you're going to feel quite hungry compared to, let's say, resistance training. So I would add cardio in as a way to keep you well-rounded, aerobically fit, so that you can recover fast, your heart is healthy, which is just ultimately good for long-term longevity and health. However, for fat loss, the main thing is going to be nutrition, resistance training, being in a deficit, and tracking your numbers so that you can adjust these things. That's what's going to lead to the majority of the fat loss results. Because if you're running to burn 100 calories or you're cutting 100 calories out of your diet, cutting 100 calories out of your diet, in my opinion, is a lot easier than running to burn 100 calories, because the amount of time you have to spend running can be 30 minutes to an hour each day. So this takes the stress of that away. The last point is that you need your muscles to be sore to grow. So this is more of a feel-good thing that people mentally associate with their training, because if I feel sore after a session, then that means it must have been a good session, right? In my experience, this isn't the case. You don't need to be overly sore each session with muscle and strength training. Being sore and not being able to walk after a session is more likely to make you want to be less consistent with your training. And as we said before, consistency is the most important factor when accounting for long-term training success and health. So I'd recommend staying in a 2 to 4 reps in reserve range. That's where you're going to get the most progress without the most soreness, so that you can continue training and being consistent and getting these incremental gains, whatever progression method you're using over time, which is more important. Now, there will be sometimes, especially when you start training, you're going to feel some soreness, even with maybe one or two sets. And that's where you start. However, as you go, your body will adapt and that soreness will go away. But that's why you really want to underestimate how hard you need to go in the beginning. Because in my experience, a lot of people that really smash themselves at the gym to start don't really tend to stay for the long term. And that's because it's probably making them really sore and they really go hard in each session. Like everything's always hard. And why not make training, easy to medium and hard sometimes and change the intensities? And that's what periodizing your training is, so that you can be consistent over the long term for continuing your progress.